Gruesome Lieutenant, we all know Switzerland, Europe's most neutral and peaceful nation for roughly 200 years by now. Although modern Switzerland is known to be mostly pacifist, they have a blood-soaked past that only ended with the last conflict they actually fought in, the Sonderbund War. And this is what we're going to talk about today. Our story starts in 1815, right after the Swiss, former Napoleonic vassal and part of the Seventh Coalition, regained their full independence. At the Vienna Congress after Napoleon's defeat, the victorious European powers have agreed on leaving Switzerland alive as a neutral buffer region, reverting this position to its pre-Napoleonic times. It is important to note that, at the time, Switzerland wasn't the federal state that we think of today, but much more of a sort of miniature version of the Holy Roman Empire. It consisted of 25 smaller and semi-independent states called cantons, 19 full cantons, 6 half cantons, that were loosely tied to each other. Under Napoleon, a first attempt was made to unify the region as the Helvetic Republic, which didn't end well. And while the Republic failed, French revolutionary spirits has managed to survive. Together with the following 1830 July Revolution in France, erupted a new wave of liberalism in Switzerland. Thus, the mainly Protestant and liberal radicals had gained the majority in the most populous Swiss cantons, and the Tagzeitung, which was the closest thing the Swiss had to an actual executive power, and began enacting progressive reforms, centralizing the organization of the cantons. The Catholic conservatives, disgusted at such ridiculous ideas as equality, voting rights, and federal nation, soon formed a defensive coalition meant to preserve their ideals, something that the Germans would shamelessly steal a few decades later. Their pact was given the name Sonderbund. Now the problem with this was that any separate alliance were considered legal. Soon the Tagzeitung sent an ultimatum to the Sonderbund to dissolve for good measure. Liberal cantons also began mobilizing the army on the 30th of October 1847 and began debating on electing a commander-in-chief. Now it's time to compare our warring parties. On one side, we had the mainly Protestant and liberal remainders of the Swiss Confederation, counting around 99,000 men and 172 cannons from the 15 cantons of Aargau, Bern, Wald, Geneva, Solensern, St. Gallen, Zurich, Surgau, Schaffhausen, Graubünden or Gießen, Ticino or Tessen, Bassenland, Basenstadt, Appenzen, Ausserrhoden, and Glarus, 12 full cantons, and 3 half cantons. They're led by Genevan General Engineer and Cartographer Guillaume Henry Dufin. Remember him, he's going to be important. The Confederation was diplomatically supported by Great Britain. On the other side, the Sonderbund consisted of roughly 79,000 troops with 88 cannons from 8 cantons, counting Lucerne, Zug, Wallis, Uri, Schwege, Freiburg, Oberwalden, and Nidwalden. 6 full cantons, 2 half cantons. The commander-in-chief was Johann Ulrich von Celsoglio, a conservative Protestant. The Sonderbund was very friendly, with sort of allied to foreign conservative powers of France and Austria. And we're talking about Switzerland here, so of course there was neutral parties too. Appenzen in Hürden, a conservative canton itself, declared neutrality, while Nuremberg, Neuschwanstein, at the time also a Prussian subject, distanced itself from the conflict as well. The liberals were having a hard time getting fully geared up for battle. It was an ideal opportunity for the insurgents to strike now. And so they did. The Sonderbund made their first move on November 3rd. Soldiers from the Uri occupied the Gossard Mountain Passage and began preparation on moving eastward with the intention of cutting Ticino off from the remainder of the liberal cantons and to link up with the Austrian troops near the border. Even upon hearing of this early and rather insignificant Sonderbund success, Dufin remained calm, to the limit of horror of a war as much as possible. He began drawing up a few rules of this war. His troops were obliged to space wounded enemies, had to treat enemy prisoners of war humanely, and banned modern artillery, which in his eyes caused too much devastation. Anyone who would ignore those orders was to be severely punished. Duffer drew up a battle plan and marched into Freiburg, which was cut off from the rest of Sonderbund on the 9th of November with 25,000 troops encircling the capital city a few days later. The odds were heavily stacked against Freiburg, who could only muster 15,000 men to defend the city, and didn't know about the enemy numbers or position. All Duffer had to do was to assault the Just like that, on the 14th of November, the Confederates occupied the city without any bloodshed, ending the Freiburg campaign with negligible casualties. All while this happened, a combined Sonderbund force from Lucerne, Wallace, and Obwalden tried to revive Freiburg during its siege by attacking the Flamand region in Aargau on the 12th of November. Although nothing came of that, and they ended up retreating after losing 2 battles at Gatwell and Lunern. Duffer had to act quickly now. He had heard of a recent Sonderbund victory at Arlo and of the following offensive into Biasaka, and had to do something to prevent the Sonderbund from reaching the capital of Ticino or the national border, allowing foreign powers to intervene. Duffer dispatched a few reinforcements to the east, then marched his troops toward Aargau to prepare the attack on the Sonderbund most important city and de facto capital of Lucerne. While battle plans were drawn up to attack Lucerne, Zug just suddenly capitulated on the 21st of November, and just was Freiburg. It was occupied without a single shot fired. Shortly after, Duffer and his troops entered Lucerne from the north with 4 divisions, along a secondary attack from the west. The Sonderbund and Confederate armies soon meet and engage near Gliscon and Merskapel, only a few kilometers north from Lucerne. Those 2 battles were the bloodiest of the war, and after a long fight, Sonderbund forces retreated, resulting in a decisive Confederate victory. Following the triumph at Gliscon and Merskapel, and a breakthrough at Schupfenheim, the way to the city of Lucerne was clear. When the city was taken on the 24th of November, the leadership of the Sonderbund had already fled into exile, signaling the beginning of the end. After the surrender of Lucerne, the Sonderbund began to slowly disintegrate. Nidwald and Oldwald were next to surrender on November 25th, Schweg on the 26th, Uri on the 27th, and Wallace on the 29th. Thanks to Duffer's humane way of waging war, the 25-day-long conflict only demanded around 100 lives, making the general a national hero. With the respectful treatment of the prisoners of war, the overly low casualties, and the installment of a liberal government in the defeated cantons, the former opponents quickly reconciliate. The following year, Switzerland was transformed into a federal state, finally ending the semi-independence of the separate cantons. The new confederation was born.